My name is Eric Latif.
So border control management issues are critical in the country's internal security, and the country is planning to host the National Border Control Management Conference hosted by the Interior Ministry. I'm privileged today to host the PS of the ministry, Dr. Raymond Omollo. Karibu sana bwana PS. Let's get into the crux of the issue today. We would want to hear first the genesis of the Border Control and Operations Committee, how it came about and what's its mandate, what is it out to achieve?
Yeah. Now, when you think about the Border Control Coordination Operations Committee, you go back to almost 10 years ago when this multi-agency framework was set up to be able to have a coordinated way of managing our border operations. But it also goes beyond just the border operations. Generally, the management of our security infrastructure has been undertaken in a multi-agency framework. And this is as far back as 10 years ago. One of the triggers, of course, was the cases of terrorism that we experienced in this country around that period in time. And we realized that there were a lot of gaps in how we were not just responding to security challenges and incidences, but also how we are sharing information across various agencies that are charged with the management of the security architecture. Now, fast forward to the Border Control, the Operations Coordination Committee, which I chair, is that it was born out of that understanding that we needed to bring all the players on board, not just to secure our borders, but also to make it easy for those who are involved in the movement or those who are involved in trade to be facilitated to do it in an efficient way. At the border, you have the guys who are responsible for customs. At the border, you have guys who are responsible for immigration. At the border, you have guys who are responsible for issues of health, and a number of other agencies, depending whether it's a land border, whether it's a seaport, or whether it's an airport. So the whole point was we needed to have this managed and coordinated in a way that you deal and address with the concerns around security, but you also facilitate movement and also to facilitate trade.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the upcoming National Border Management Conference that will be kick-starting on the 2nd to the 4th of April. What is it out to achieve? Why are we holding this conference?
So first is that it's one of a kind in terms of being able to call all the players who are involved in border management to a sitting. And primarily we are targeting to, first of all, be in a position to take stock 10 years down the line. What are some of the successes of these coordinated border operations and management? And look at what is new in terms of what is happening globally across various jurisdictions insofar as border management is concerned. Then number two is to re-emphasize the need for the multi-agency cooperation and coordination. So we are bringing all the different players together so that then we are able to build and leverage on the synergies and the experiences and the challenges that each of these agencies see in this coordinated border management exercise. But most importantly also is that we have done our border management in a coordinated fashion, and we are now moving or looking at moving from a coordinated approach to border management to an integrated approach to border management. So those are some of the major things that will be on the table for discussion for the 3 days that will be having this conference. And also beyond the various agencies that are involved, we are also looking at the international agencies, particularly some of the major partners that we have worked with, but also who have an interest in the management of movement across the borders.
Okay. Some quarters Bwana peers have described Kenya's borders as being porous. I'm just wondering, what are these immediate challenges that you're dealing with at the moment, and how are you fixing them?
I think it's good to put things into context or into perspective when you talk about the porosity of our borders. So case in point, our border with Somalia, you are talking of a stretch of about 800 kilometers. Our border with Ethiopia, another 600 kilometers. We have a long stretch again with Uganda, and then of course Tanzania, and then of course there's the stretch that we also have with South Sudan. Now, it's interesting, particularly take the case of our border with Somalia. One, you look at the terrain, and then just the sheer length of that distance. It's like moving from Mombasa to Busia. You can imagine what that means. And then even in terms of infrastructure, there's a huge challenge on the infrastructure that exists in that part of the country. And it then means that even if you wanted to put several points of entry and exit, there has to be huge investments in that particular space. Now, there are also concerns around security, forgetting about just the length and breadth of that particular space. And then there's also the conditions around that place. It's largely an arid area. So yes, it's proper, or it's okay to say that we have a porous border, but then that needs to be looked at against the context of the distances that we are looking at, and also the geographical features along those border points. But having said that, what are we doing to address the porousness of our borders with our neighboring countries? One is that we are constantly opening up several points of entry and exit, which then would help address the concern on the porousness of the border. But then, of course, there is also the challenges around insecurity, which we are also dealing with. Coupled with that, then there's also the development which must also happen, so that then these very vast arid parts of this country are not left behind when the rest of the country is developing.
Mm-hmm. There's been definitely massive focus on the Somalia-Kenya border. And last year in May, we had Kenya's President William Ruto and his counterpart in Somalia, and they had talks about reopening the border. Again, we went ahead to hear from media reports that this was suspended due to security concerns. What's the true government position on this Kenya-Somalia border and its reopening?
I think, first of all, we need to appreciate that Somalia is now a member of the East African community. So we are basically one huge community of nations within the East African context, and part of even the admission of Somalia into the EAC was basically to allow them to benefit from that unity that the other countries get. Now, with regards to the opening of the borders, one is that Somalia is an interesting case study, looking at the security challenges that Somalia has faced over the years, particularly with terrorism. And therefore, it means that as a country, we take a lot of interest. But also remember the distance in terms of the length of the border between Somalia and Kenya. You are looking at 800 kilometer stretch. And there have been plans to reopen a number of border points between Kenya and Somalia. Now that has to be done in a way that we are also still able to keep a handle on the security challenges that, of course, still persist today. As it is, you are aware that there is a drawdown of the AU forces that were in Somalia, that were supporting the Somali government to stabilize. Now, with that drawdown, there is a good chance that it will come with added challenges around security, which we are constantly discussing, we are constantly engaging, and we are looking forward in the next coming months to probably about a year, when we'll be able to have these border points fully functional. The reality is that there's movement between Kenya and Somalia, whether it's through the border that we share, or through the ports. There are flights that go to Somalia basically on a daily basis. So there's trade that is happening. But with the need for us to move ahead and reopen the border points that were closed, we will go a long way in increasing not just the volume of people, but also the volume of trade. And then we're also able to deal with the illicit trade that to an extent is happening on account of us not having a number of the border points fully functional.
How central is technological surveillance in addressing some of these border challenges?
It's very key, and these are some of the things that we'll be discussing during next week's border conference, in the sense that how do we leverage on technology to be able to better man our borders. As we speak today, one of the agencies, that's the Kenya Revenue Authority, is soon deploying drones to support its operations across a number of the land border points where they take the lead. They are the lead agency in terms of the border operations at the land port. In the case of Kenya Ports Authority or JKIA, you have body scanners, you have cameras, and this speaks to the fact that it's impossible to have boots in every space. One, you don't have the numbers, but also it's not cost effective. And we must be able to leverage on technology to be able to do that. So whether it's in terms of drones, whether it's in terms of the cameras, whether it's in terms of even the police equipment with regards to security. And there's a huge investment that the administration of President Ruto has put in place to support in that particular respect. There's a huge program on police modernization, which is currently going on. The Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Revenue Authority are being supported largely to be able to invest in a lot of that technology so that we are much more efficient.
Community involvement is definitely one of the key areas that is focused when it comes to border control management. And I'm just wondering, are there specific strategies or initiatives that are aligned to community involvement that you're exploring?
Not just exploring. As we speak, there exist a lot of community engagement efforts that goes on, starting with what we are doing within the structure of the national government administration officers. So you are having the chiefs, you're having the assistant chiefs, and you're having the village elders. So they form what we are calling the peace committees at the very local level. And what this helps is with regards to not just informing and disseminating what the government is doing, but also it offers a forum where we are able to pick from the various communities what some of their issues are, what some of their concerns are. And this helps also beyond addressing the security challenges in the context of movement across borders and also illicit trade, then it becomes very handy. So that then it's the softer part of what we are doing as a government, and there is a need for us to continuously invest in this. As we speak today, we are having engagements with a number of partners. One of those, of course, is IOM. We are also having bilateral engagements with other development partners like the UK government, the American government, so that then we are able to engage the communities around the border counties. This also speaks to our engagement with the county governments, because they also have a role to play. So you are involving the elected leadership, but also involving the communities. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Last year, Bona PS, you were quoted as saying that 40% of apprehended border crimes in Busia specifically were connected to fake documents and identification. And I'm just wondering, between that time and now, what has changed?
One is that there definitely has been a significant improvement. I'll need to look at what the latest numbers are, but it still accounts for the biggest number of cases that we are dealing with across our borders in terms of movement. Now, there's been also most recently investment that we've done, particularly in the Department of Immigration, which is in our ministry, so that then we make it not fashionable, or we don't make it easy for people to want to cut corners, particularly to get travel documents. Now, with the introduction of the visa-free regime that the president announced at the end of last year, it has also enabled us to really cut down on even those forgeries, because before someone travels into the country, we already have their information ahead of time. And that allows us to do pre-screening, allows us to also share data with other international agencies, including agencies like Interpol. So there's a significant reduction from what we were seeing before we started the visa-free regime at the beginning of this year. But then it is something that we have to constantly work on. We are getting to be much more efficient as a government in terms of the issuance of travel documents. We are also getting much more better in terms of how we coordinate interactions between the agencies that are involved at the border points.
It's been roughly 1.5 years since you took power, Bernard, PS. And what would you say is the state of security in this country? Is Kenya safer since you took power?
I think it's President Ruto that took power. So for us, we are working to support him and to deliver for the country. I can confidently say that the state of the security is way better than it was when President Ruto came into power. As it is today, I think the two major challenges that we've been dealing with, and even that we have done with a very good measure of success, is terrorism, number one. Number two, of course, is banditry, which is a big issue in the North Rift. The others are pretty much not of a serious worry. Of course, most recently we are dealing with illicit alcohol and, of course, drug and substance abuse. It has an effect on the security architecture of this country in terms of the proceeds of that going to fund or to support a number of criminal activities. But overall, the reality is that the state of the security of the nation is better than it was 1.5 years ago.
If you can stick on the question of banditry, what is your level of success, Bona PS? Because this keeps coming up in the media. We're seeing a lot of affirmments coming from your side, but the situation seems to be going haywire.
I think the truth is, I would put it at 7 out of 10. I would have loved that we should have completely dealt with it, but then there are a number of challenges that we must constantly deal with. If you look at, even when we were going into the Christmas period, if you went back a year or several years before last holidays, the people in the North Rift would tell you that for the first time they were able to have a peaceful Christmas. And it was largely on account of the interventions that we were able to undertake in the North Rift. Now, there's been the most recent spate of reports of killings, and even then it's very isolated. It's in Baringo County and part of Samburu, and even in Baringo, it's just I think notoriously there are 3 locations in Baringo North sub-county and 1 or 2 locations in Baringo South. Now, when you actually analyze it, of course, there's the issue of the delayed rents, people wanting to go and either restock or go and people are looking for grazing land, and then there is the conflict that happens. But most recently, you are seeing more or less like retaliatory attacks. Now, there is no excuse for that, but by and large, you will admit, for example, there is nothing happening in West Pokot and a number of other counties in the North Rift where traditionally we've had challenges. But there is also the bigger question on the responsibility of the leaders from the North Rift. And we've had conversations, and I think it's important that they must take responsibility. They cannot run away from the responsibility to support the government in addressing the issue around banditry in the North Rift. Yes, and I'm sure in the coming days there will be quite a bit of communication that will be coming from government in that respect. Yes, it's a pity that we are still having those isolated cases, which to me, even a single life lost is not worth it, and it's not something we would say that we are happy with. Yes,
it definitely seems to be something very complex. It has economic and even cultural nuances. But I'm wondering, is there a plan for rehabilitation for some of these culprits?
I think what we are looking at as a government is beyond calming and also silencing the spate of killing that is happening, is a long-term plan to develop these areas. So we have a Marshall Plan, which is going to involve opening up of roads, building of social amenities, whether they are health facilities, whether they are markets and schools, and also quite a bit of investment in terms of irrigation, so that then the people from these communities do not just then have to rely on livestock as the only source of their livelihood. Yeah, so there's quite an elaborate program which again is being led from a multi-agency front to be able to address what we see to be the historical or what you might want to call the cultural practices that has been there over the years. And for me, the bottom line is we must be able to take the girls and the boys to school. Yes, and I think the president is clear on that. There's no debate about that. Yeah.
Part of the modernization of the police service that has been a huge talking point has been about, and it was contained actually in the Justice Maraga report. How does it look like for you? How does modernizing police look like? How much will Kenyans taxpayers have to cough up?
One is that the police service has suffered, let's say, more than 10 years of neglect. So there's never been serious investment away from the welfare issues that also the Maraga Task Force talked about. Is also the issue of equipment. How well prepared our police officers are ready to move into certain spaces. So there's the issue of mobility. There is the issue of having the state of art equipment. We've talked about drones. We've talked about whether it's air mobility. So all these are things that the president is very passionate about, that they must be given the capacity to do what Kenyans expect them to do. But of course, beyond that, there is also the responsibility on all of us to also do our part. Yes, and for me, what is clear is that that investment that the government is making is worth it. Yeah.
Let me also draw your attention to another important subject, the extrajudicial killing. Part of the commitments that the president made when he was coming into office was that he'll end extrajudicial killings. Would you face Kenyans bona fides and tell them that this is a thing of the past?
From where I sit, it's a thing of the past. And the president was very clear from day one. And of course, there were conversations about special forces that were, for one reason or another, were involved, and it's not there. I am yet to see what one case where it will be pointed out that our officers have been involved. Yes.
Let me shift gears to a different subject again on the Haiti subject. Of course, this has been an emotive one. It has had lots of legal and even public scrutiny. And I think the obvious question that Kenya are asking is, what's the rationale? What is Kenya standing to gain from sending its police officers some 12,000 kilometers across the Atlantic?
I think for me, you don't want to just be looking at, in every situation, what you're gaining. I think it's important to also look at what is it that you are giving. Now, Kenya belongs to the community of nations, and we have that moral responsibility to also make a difference to humanity. Now, the Kenyans' engagement in Haiti was out of a UN resolution that then there was a formal request for Kenya to support. And this request was out of Kenya's experience over the years in similar efforts across the globe. So it's not that first time that Kenya is going to support in the peace building or to support in security arrangements outside the country. So I would want to look at it that we are doing our responsibility being among the community of nations, but also to offer an opportunity for the people of Haiti to also have a semblance of peace so that then they can go about their lives like everybody else is doing.
What's the status of this deployment? Because we were told that we were waiting for Haiti to build its transitional authority before we deploy. Should this take years? How do you handle this?
I would not be able to speak to how long it's going to take, but then procedurally, there are certain things that must happen. You remember when we were about or ready to be deployed, there was a court case which we had to comply with. That I think we have actually dealt with. Now, of course, there is an issue in Haiti about the transition, and I think it's only good for us to respect those provisions. Yeah.
One last question related to Haiti. The police officer who died in Washington, in what was seen, was described as a pre-deployment program. This family buried their kin without an autopsy report.
I don't think that is correct, that they buried their kin without an autopsy report. First, of course, this officer was amongst a team that had gone on a pre-engagement mission, and it's unfortunate that he died while in New York ahead of this mission, and we had, of course, to bring his body back to bury. Now, his death definitely had nothing to do with any deployment in Haiti, because they were not in Haiti to begin with. Yes, they were basically just a preparatory team looking at the paperwork, what are some of the issues that needs to be dealt with as the entire police force team was preparing to be deployed. Yes, I would not want to delve into the details of the cause of his death, but for a fact, there was an autopsy, and all that is available.
Once again, we appreciate Bona PS. That has been PS Raymond, Dr. Raymond Omollo, speaking to us on a variety of issues touching on our security. Thank you for watching.